Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to be covering our News Digest unit for the month of June. And we're going to Colombia in South America. Some people say Colombia, but in Espanol they say Colombia, which is a large country in South America. I think it's right next to Panama there.
You might want to say what Espanol means, too.
That means Spanish in Spanish.
In case our listeners don't study Spanish.
Yeah, some of them probably don't study Spanish, but indeed, Colombia, of course, is a very large country in South America, and of course, it's considered a beautiful country, despite all the bad news we received from there about
the drug wars
and stuff like that. But there's still people living there happily, and we've got some men there who are having some problems with something called machismo. And there's some kind of helpline for those men who can call. They can call that line if they feel like they're getting out of line. They're being too masculine, too macho.
Well, it's not just because being masculine's great as far as I'm concerned. I love masculine men. But machismo is more of this sense that you have the right to dominate women because you're a guy. We used to call these male chauvinist pigs when I was young, but now we have other words for them. But I want to date alpha men. I'm just going to say it out loud. I don't want to date a soy boy or a beta man. I like guys who are masculine. But yeah, this is an exaggeration where you take it too far and you try to control people around you, especially women, I guess, control people around you because you think you're macho.
Right. There sometimes can be a fine line between masculinity and machismo, and I guess we'll talk about that as our lesson continues. But first of all, let's read through the entire contents of our lesson, and then we'll be back to discuss it. When we think of helplines, most of us automatically assume they're for victims. Whether it's abused women, troubled LGBTQ+ teenagers, or sufferers of mental illness, many helplines are set up to assist those without power. But one new helpline in Colombia is turning its attention in the opposite direction. The Bogota-based Calm Line, launched in 2021, focuses on male callers who struggle with anger, jealousy, or even violence as a result of machismo culture. Machismo is a deep-seated concept in many Latin American cultures that states men must be dominant, fearless, and emotionally invulnerable. In a word, macho. This drives men to use violence to solve problems and detaches them from their feelings. As society becomes more progressive, many men have struggled to reconcile the expectation to be macho with how these behaviors harm both themselves and the women in their lives. That's why the government of Bogota, led by the city's first female mayor, Claudia Lopez, has implemented the publicly funded Calm Line. So far, the line's results have been quite positive. Around a dozen men of all ages and backgrounds call in every day. The line's specialized psychologists talk them through their struggles, helping them to untangle toxic behaviors and praising their progress. Other government initiatives set up to tackle machismo include Men in Care, a school targeted at helping husbands and fathers tend to their homes and families. There's also the TV miniseries Calm, which depicts a group of male friends supporting each other in confronting their macho tendencies. The overall goal, says the head of Bogota's Culture Office, is to eliminate machismo from Colombian society in favor of a healthier version of masculinity. If this happens, Colombia will set an example for other Latin American countries to do the same.
Okay, guys, let's take a look at the headline first. The headline is usually the title you see in a newspaper or a magazine before you jump into a news story. Here we've got Calm Line. We're going to talk about that. It's the helpline. and it's giving Colombia's men tools to tackle machismo. The tools here aren't actual things like hammers and saws. We're talking about more figurative tools, tools that you can develop emotionally to tackle things. Tackle here, I look at tackle, it's a great word for this article because when I think of tackle, I automatically think of American football where these big, tough guys are on the field. And if you tackle someone, you get your arms around them and you drag them down to the ground. So that's what a tackle is in sports, especially football. But we also use it in business, our lives. If you're tackling a problem, you're confronting it, you're trying to work it out, you're trying to resolve something. And that's what author here is using it to represent, a way just to work something out. And here we're talking about machismo. I think we talked about this in the beginning, kind of explained. It's this exaggerated feeling of power that men could have, and they use it to dominate others, which isn't good. You should never dominate anyone.
Right. Machismo is a noun. It comes from Mexican Spanish, which is actually from the word macho, which means male in Mexican Spanish. And so machismo makes this a noun, the state of men maybe going overboard with being men. It's okay to be a man and be masculine, but if you overdo it, if you beat up women and stuff like
terrible.
that, then that can be called machismo. And here in the first paragraph it says...
That could be called an abuser.
That as well. Machismo doesn't mean you only beat women, but maybe you're trying to dominate. But when we think of helplines, most of us automatically assume they're for victims.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, we do have helplines. There are certain numbers you can call if you're having problems. There's one if you're feeling suicidal. I think it's 1995. I think you can call that because it sounds like something in Mandarin, which means you're trying to get help from somebody. And there are other helplines as well, and there are people online who are willing to help you out. But indeed, most of us think of the people calling those lines as being victims. Like if you're being abused in a relationship or something like that, there's a line that you can call. If you're being taken advantage of as a foreign laborer, for example, maybe there's a phone call you can make to get some help. Those are helplines, and we assume the people calling are victims.
Right. So whether it's abused women, if you've been abused, it doesn't necessarily mean physically abused. It could be mentally or emotionally abused. That happens too. Troubled LGBTQ plus teenagers or sufferers of mental illness. So it's covering all of these conditions and groups. Many helplines are set up to assist those without power. Sometimes you don't have anyone to turn to for help or support. A lot of people are alone in this world. And so this gives them a way to touch base with someone, get some support from that other person on the other other side of the line that you're talking to. And that's very helpful for people everywhere. We have, like Tom said, we have helplines for lots of different people. And yeah, it's usually for victims, correct? But this one actually is supposed to help someone who is trying to control himself and control his rage at somebody, perhaps, or his feelings of wanting to dominate someone. So they've set up this line in Colombia, which is called Calm Line, and it's in Bogota, or Bogota-based. That means that's where they operate. That's their headquarters, you could say. If somebody's based somewhere, they do the majority of their business in that one place. And then they might have offices, we call those satellite offices, in other places, or they may not have an office at all in another place that they fly into to do business or drive a car. So it's Bogota-based Calm Line, and it was launched in 2021. It's pretty new.
Indeed. So Bogota, of course, is a big city in Colombia, and this particular Calm Line is based there. I suppose you could call this line from any point in the country, from Medellin or from Barranquilla or places like that. Yes, indeed, it was launched in the year 2021, which was last year. And this focuses on male callers who struggle with anger, jealousy, or even violence as a result of machismo culture. So this one specializes challenges in taking care of men who have these problems. They might have anger. Maybe they're angry at their girlfriend or their wife or something, and they're afraid they're going to get violent, or they're getting jealous. Maybe they see their wife or girlfriend talking to somebody for too long, and they don't think that's right, and they're getting angry, and they feel like they're going to beat somebody up. And, of course, they're dealing with violence as well, and these are all a result of machismo culture. Men going a little bit too far with their masculinity.
Now, here it says machismo is a deep-seated concept. If something's deep-seated, it has very deep roots. So probably goes back a long time. And it says it's a deep-seated concept or idea in many Latin American cultures that states men must be dominant, fearless, and emotionally invulnerable. In a word, macho. When we were growing up, it wasn't cool for guys to cry. But I can tell you, my brothers, who are very masculine, do cry. My dad is super masculine. And yeah, he was very tender with different problems. He was very compassionate. I think some of this has to do with people having anger issues, too. So if you are dealing with some of these things, it might be because you grew up in that type of culture that encouraged it. I have to be honest, I haven't spent any time in Latin American cultures, and so it's not really fair of me to judge this. But Tom, you've been in Mexico quite a bit of the time. So did you see this yourself?
Not really. I think this is something that the Mexicans probably know about more than some American just traveling in Mexico would be able to see. I think machismo is present in most cultures all around the world.
Oh, sure. It's not limited to Latin America.
We tend to maybe stereotype Latin American countries as having a deep-seated macho culture. But again, I think it could happen anywhere. And that's, of course, something you could discuss yourselves as to whether it exists here in Taiwan as well. But we're going to take a little bit of a break right now and listen to our Chinese teacher. But stay tuned. We'll be right back.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天这个 News Digest 很特别哦，要介绍哥伦比亚的施暴者专线。施暴者专线是什么意思？是求助专线吗？所谓的 helplines 吗？其实如果听到施暴者专线啊，什么求助专线啊，家暴专线，我们可能大部分都会自动假设它是给受害者的，这也就是第一段第一句的意思。那当然所谓的那个 victims 在第一段这个第一句最后一个字，这个受害者，不管说是受虐妇女啦，或者是多元性别的青少年啦，或者是精神疾病的患者啦，当然很多的求助专线都是设立来帮助那一些所谓比较没有力量或者是弱势的人。我们在第一段第二句这边也特别看到最后面，请特别注意一下倒数第4个字，这里的 assist 其实是 help帮助，后面有一个 those， 如果莫名其妙看到 one 看到 those， 通常就指的是某一个人或者是那一些人。根据文意的确没有错，这里的 those 指的是我们刚刚讲的那些比较弱势的那些人，而后面的 without power 其实介系词加上名词，它会有形容词片语这样子的功能哦。所以 those without power 指的就是比较没有力量比较弱势的这一群人。好，那么但是今天我们要介绍的新闻是在哥伦比亚，在哥伦比亚有一个新的求助专线，并不是要让这个受害者来打电话哦，而是我们把注意力呢转往反的方向。那么这样子的一个反方向是什么呢？其实这个冷静专线啊，这个 calm line 接下来我们看到第一段第4句的地方，它的总部其实是位在波哥大。那么它在2021年，也就是去年的时候推出，主要聚焦在因为大男人主义文化而在愤怒、嫉妒甚至是暴力当中挣扎的男性来电者的身上。我们这句话要稍微看一下，因为这里呢我们特别提到了一个所谓的 calm line， 一个冷静专线。这冷静专线之后有个逗点，其实它是这个补充说明的非限定用法关系子句的一种简化，本来应该是逗点之后有 which was， 那个 launch 其实就是 start 开始的意思，所以如果我们今天把句子简化的话， which 删掉， was 变成 being， 在句子简化当中 being 它是没有意义的，所以它又被删掉。好，我们看到一个关系子句的简化，那么在2021年 被推出、被开始，就着重在那些 male callers 男性的来电者。那么 callers 之后的互到句尾可以左右括号，它是限定用法关系子句哦。先行词就是我们刚刚说的 male callers。好，为什么要提到这个呢？因为其实就是有关于大男人主义啦。那大男人主义就是在许多拉美文化当中，它是一个很根深蒂固的一种观念。在拉美这样子的文化当中，它就表示男人就是要掌控一切，无畏无惧，感情无坚不摧。总而言之，就是非常的大男人。我们要看一下第二段的第一句。这个概念是什么？其实第一句当中啊，我们注意一下这个第5个单字叫做 concept。后面呢，我们在 culture 之后发现了一个 that， 我们先把 that 到破折号这个地方左右括号起来。接着呢，我们先行词其实是A deep-seated concept， 一直到 cultures 的这个地方。可先行词真的很长诶，我们常会说，这个冠带 that 的前面先行词难道是 Latin American cultures？ 不是哦，在这里的所谓的拉美文化指的是一个地点，那么真正的先行词是 A deep-seated concept， 就是一种根深蒂固的观念。那么括号里面就补充说明这个观念是什么。简而言之，所谓的大男人最后面就是所谓的 macho， 就是要很大男人主义。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, let's continue talking about machismo and a helpline in Bogota, Colombia that's helping men there deal with issues such as anger, jealousy, or even violence. And those things are a result of machismo culture. Again, it's a deep-seated concept in many Latin American cultures.And it states that men have to be dominant, they have to be fearless, they have to be brave, and they have to be emotionally invulnerable. In a word, or put simply, macho. They can't show emotion, they can't cry and stuff like that. They've got to be macho men. And this drives men to use violence to solve problems and detaches them from their feelings.Okay, so indeed, if you're going to be macho, you need to solve your problems using violence, or maybe yelling or talking loud or things like that, instead of actually sitting down and, well, let's discuss our problems now. Let's just put all our cards on the table and work things out like mature human beings. But macho sort of requires them, no, you've got to scream and yell and never admit you're wrong.Right.
So this drives men to use violence to solve problems and detaches them from their feelings. So if you're detached from something, it's like there's some space between what's going on and your feelings about it. You can be detached about sometimes you have to detach yourself from things in order to keep control of your emotions.Just an example, I'm asked to sing at funerals sometimes, and I can't really think about it too much. I can't think about that person and look at their family members because I can't cry. If you start to cry, you can't sing. So sometimes you have to detach yourself from it.Or maybe you've got a couple of friends in a circle of friends that you belong to and they're fighting each other. Sometimes you just have to detach yourself, not get involved with that, so that, the whole group starts arguing with each other. So sometimes it's good to walk away from things. But when these guys don't have the skills they need to discuss things calmly and without violence and less emotion, then sometimes they turn to using their fists or using more harsher methods. I have to say this is true of some women, though, too. Just to be fair, a lot of women beat up on their husbands. So I think we just have to be more willing to listen to other people and definitely not get too emotional too fast. It's hard sometimes. If you're really angry, walk away.
Right. So again, the problem is men don't really face their feelings. They just get angry and yell and stuff like that.
Yeah, they don't like to talk out or talk about their feelings much.
It
really.
is unnatural.
Yeah.
And as society becomes more progressive, many men have struggled to reconcile the expectation to be macho with how these behaviors harm both themselves and the women in their lives. So if you talk about something being progressive, that means people are accepting new ideas and they're not so conservative or not as conservative as they used to. So basically, if you're conservative in this regard, perhaps you think that men aren't supposed to cry, they're not supposed to talk about their feelings. But if we're getting progressive, then we should allow men that freedom to cry, to express their feelings, but still be masculine.
Good luck getting some of these men to talk about their feelings. Yeah, but I think it's a great thing. I just happen to be lucky. My family is filled with guys who I've seen cry. My brothers cry, but they're also really great defenders of the females in our family. I love them all. Anyway, yeah, society becomes more progressive and tries to adopt some of these things. Many men have struggled to reconcile the expectation to be macho with how these behaviors harm both themselves and women in their lives. Reconcile is one of our vocab words, guys. To reconcile means you try to restore broken relationships. Maybe you were once friendly with someone and then they did something that was really hurtful to you, or maybe they were disloyal. A friend was disloyal to you. If you reconcile, you repair that broken relationship and you go on to be friends again. So you're able to coexist in harmony and you can be peaceful together. But sometimes things can't be reconciled.
Exactly.
And that's sometimes when couples get divorced or break up.
Yeah, sometimes talking just doesn't solve things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does, and a lot of times it doesn't. But they're trying to reconcile the expectation of being macho with these behaviors harming both themselves and women in their lives. So they need to compromise there. Maybe they can be macho or masculine and not harm themselves or women in their lives. It's possible, and this phone line, I suppose, is trying to help them do that. That's why the government of Bogota, led by the city's first female mayor, Claudia Lopez, has implemented the publicly funded Calm Line. If you implement something, you start it and you start making it available to people. You basically put it in place and it begins operation.
So moving on to the next paragraph, it says, so far the line's results have been quite positive, which is great. Around a dozen men of all ages and backgrounds call in every day, and the line's specialized psychologists talk them through their struggles, helping them to untangle toxic behaviors and praising their progress. This has got a couple of words and phrases in here we need to look at. If you're a psychologist, you have earned a PhD in psychology. You are not an MD or doctor. You're a doctor that earned a PhD rather than an MD. So if you earned an MD, you're called a psychiatrist. If you earned a PhD, you're a psychologist. And if you talk through things, you just sit down and try to discuss things in a calm way. A psychologist would do that. They ask you about your feelings. They try to interpret what is going on and try to help you resolve these struggles on your own. To untangle, I look at untangle and I think of hair. My hair's curly. It gets little tangles in it all the time. If you untangle your hair, you probably use some conditioner. Ladies, especially long hair, gets tangled. And toxic means poison. If something's toxic, it's harmful, it's poisonous. So a harmful, poisonous behavior would be perhaps beating up on someone that you're really upset with.
Right. You were dumped by your girlfriend and you have feelings of wanting to kill her or something like that. That's terrible. That's a toxic behavior. So if you call this line, maybe you'll calm down and you'll be able to reconcile your feelings about that and be able to let her go and realize, hey, sometimes, things just don't work out. Now, other government initiatives set up to tackle machismo include Men in Care. a school targeted at helping husbands and fathers tend to their homes and families. So these are other government initiatives or other programs that are trying to tackle machismo. We've got one called Men in Care, and it's a school that help husbands and fathers take care of their homes and families. There's also the TV miniseries Calm, which depicts a group of male friends supporting each other in confronting their macho tendencies. So if something depicts something, it just shows it to us. It lets us see it in a certain way.
Yeah, and here's our next vocab word, confront, which is a verb. If you confront somebody, you meet with somebody face to face. It's used in sort of a negative way. If you confront someone, it might be kind of a hostile conversation, an angry conversation. But you can also use confront to just deal with some problem that you have. Instead of running away, sometimes we have to face up to our problems, confront our problems, and work them out. The overall goal of these programs, says the head of Bogota's culture office, is to get rid of machismo from Colombian society in favor of a healthier version of masculinity. So if this happens, Colombia will be set up as an example for other Latin American countries to do the same. And like Tom mentioned before, this is kind of a stereotype. Some of this behavior happens all over the world in lots of different types of cultures. But yeah, we'll have to see if they're successful with this and these new programs. It looks like they've got a good start.
Yep, so if this happens, if it is the case, then Colombia will set an example for other Latin American countries to do the same, and for other countries in the world as well. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
而这样子的一个文化就驱使男性要使用暴力来解决问题，然后要抽离自己的感受。不过因为社会的进步嘛，那么这些男性呢，其实一直想要做一些协调，希望能够成为大男人的期许。但是呢，这些行为他们如何会伤害到自己跟生命中的女性，其实他们也知道。所以这当中呢，希望能够做一个调和。我们在第二段第三句的地方特别注意第一个字的 as， 在这里是连接词when 的意思。不过第二段的第四句呢，也要特别注意一下，因为在这里也有一个非限定用法关系子句的一个简化，先行词就是波哥大政府 The government of Bogota， 逗点之后其实省略的是 which is， 也就是被女性的市长谁谁谁所领导的。那么右括号可以括在逗点的地方，因为它是一个补充说明的关系子句。不过当然咯，到现在为止这个专线的结果是相当正面的，因为专线的这个心理学家会向打电话来的男性解释他们的挣扎，然后帮助他们厘清这些行为，称赞他们的进步。我们在最后面第三段第三句的地方特别注意一下，有一个分词构句哦，逗点之后的 helping本来应该有一个连接词 and 再加上动词的 help， 不过在这里句子当中前面原本的 talk 跟后面的 help 其实是同时发生的，所以通常两个动作同时发生，在谈话当中就进行了帮助。那么 and 常常就会进行一个省略，而导致呢会所谓的分词构句的产生，也就是表示两个动作同时进行。好，那么当然另外呢还有一些其他的措施，包括有男性照护啦，也就是一所希望能够帮助丈夫父亲照顾家人的一个学校，甚至还有电视剧来推出这样子希望能够改变大男人主义文化的一些措施。好，所以希望呢这样子的一个做法也能够让其他的政府能够观摩到。以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And remember, machismo is probably not so good, but masculinity is pretty good. Having a deep voice and lifting weights and protecting women, there's nothing wrong with that. That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
See ya.